This is about driving, so it's about your car. This is about loving to drive, so it's about choosing the right gasoline. This is about quality, so it's about Sunoco. This is about excitement, so it's about Ultra 94. This is about performance, so it's about advanced detergency in every grade. This is about wanting it all and getting it all. So like we said, this is about Sunoco.
Mitsubishi presents a luxury lease program whose greatest luxury is choice. The elegant Diamante LS, the sensational 3000 GTSL, the rugged Montero SR. Your choice, just $399 a month for 36 months. Difficult choice, easy terms, with a luxury lease from Mitsubishi.
Make your choice at your 3-state Mitsubishi Motors dealer.
Working for a mad scientist is no day at the beach, especially the graveyard shift.
Iggy, power!
Then I dug up these lottery monster cash tickets. I can win 5 thou in a heartbeat, or even a mill on the spin. Then I can kiss Dr. Nutcase goodbye.
Lots of power!
Play the Pennsylvania Lottery's Monster Cash with $21 million in prizes.
My tickets!
At Choice Seating, we have over 500 styles of sofas, chairs, sleepers, and sectionals, and over 2,000 fabrics and 250 leathers to put on them. In fact, after you've seen this commercial, you'll have seen about 100 of the different combinations you can create at Choice Seating. That's 100 down and 1,124,900 to go.
Save 25% now during Choice Seating's Fall Special Order Sale, and get delivery in just 35 days.
You get the idea.
Then get to the phone and pick out your halftime package now.
The inventor of the so-called suicide machine has helped another person end her life. Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who has helped 4 people commit suicide, was present at the suicide of a Michigan woman suffering from cancer. 52-year-old Lois Hawes died this morning after placing a mask over her face and inhaling carbon monoxide. This was the 5th such suicide that Kevorkian has assisted. A West Philadelphia teenager is dead and his mother is accused of killing him. Police say Gilda Johnson shot her son in the head during a heated argument early this morning inside a home near 46th and Market Streets. 16-year-old Lance Taylor died from his wounds hours later at the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. Johnson is in police custody and will be charged with murder. About 200 West Oak Lane residents took to the streets to send a message to drug dealers. The Unity March also served as a victory rally. The group, West Oak Lane Against Drugs, has successfully closed several so-called nuisance bars. The rally ended with a neighborhood award ceremony and a community picnic. Reggie White usually spends his weekends going after quarterbacks, but today, the Eagles' defensive lineman was out looking for souls. White led a group called Athletes for Jesus, which reaches out to people in inner-city neighborhoods. Farland Chang caught up with the street ministry in Camden.
Reggie White makes a lot of money as an all-pro lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles. But he says spreading the gospel, not accumulating money, is what makes him happiest. That's just what he did today for the very first time in Camden.
The kids are down left and right, while a lot of us are sitting back watching. And so God has shown me that I need to use my time and my finances to try to benefit the communities. We come out here to have fun. And we want to show you that serving God is fun. If you want to learn to rap, then you need to learn to read.
Rap artist Mike E. from Detroit gave a new dimension to gospel music. He says the gospel comes in all different languages, from rap to reggae. Gail Moore is the only American gospel reggae singer in the country. She left it up to her husband, former New England Patriot Art Moore, to talk about redemption.
We got some young brothers out here popping caps at each other, dealing drugs, killing everybody in the neighborhood, and think this is it. Y'all need to wake up now and find out what's right. Because a lot of the stuff that your boys are showing you is not right, and it's ended up getting a lot of brothers killed.
Today's event shows how the message of hope is just as important as the messenger. A lot of young people would like to see more of each.
If he already been through it, he's actually telling us what mistakes that we won't go through life. And he's trying to tell us, watch out.
Reggie White, he's coming over here and talking to everybody about God and stuff. If kids come over here and, like, listen, they'll listen.
And by day's end, Reggie White was so inspired, he promised to be back in Camden every other week. In Camden, New Jersey, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Still to come, don't put that umbrella away just yet. Bill Elias has the Sunday forecast. But first,
it is a political relic, a throwback to a time of populist politicians who succeeded with street smarts and knowing which strings to pull. Billy Bulger almost defines Boston Irish.
His name is Michael Coons, a 13-year-old with AIDS. He got the disease from a very expensive medication made from blood. So did thousands of other hemophiliacs. And their families are all going broke trying to keep them from, on the one hand, bleeding to death, and on the other, dying of AIDS.
His AIDS expenses alone, I'd say somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 just this last month.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
I saw those lights, and even though I was only 5, I knew something terrible had happened. First, I saw the cars. They were, I don't know, mangled. My father told me not to look, but I had to. I remember seeing this little boy who made eye contact. I could see the fear in his eyes. It's something I'll never forget. No, I don't drive a Mercedes to impress my friends.
Green. Who wouldn't envy green? Such a versatile color. Summer, winter, indoors or out, green's a natural. And nobody does green like Dockers.
Is this seat taken?
No, please.
So that's what you're eating? Too bad.
This is a whole grain cereal.
Yes, with sugar and preservatives.
Oh, and I suppose that you're
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain. It's made with pure whole grain.
Oh, really?
It's the only whole grain cereal without sugar or preservatives added.
The only one? I didn't know.
I know.
So what else should I know?
You have milk on your chin?
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain, as good as whole grain gets.
It comes as no surprise that the unemployment figures in the United States, nearly 10 million at last count, are higher than anyone wants them to be. What may come as a surprise, though, is that the United States government, of all people, is promoting the export of some of the very jobs that workers in this country depend on for their livelihood. The textile and apparel industry is a case in point. The U.S. is losing an average of 2,000 textile and apparel jobs a month, 500,000 in the past 10 years. Several 100,000 of them lost to Central America and the Caribbean, where unskilled workers, mainly women, work for about 1/10 of what their counterparts in the U.S. make. Besides low wages, local taxes are non-existent. But businessmen also come because the United States government gives them low-interest loans, subsidizes worker training programs, and offers tax breaks they can't get in the U.S. For instance, U.S. government loans help start up this factory in El Salvador. The plant employs Salvadorans who now turn out the same sportswear that a year ago was made by American workers at the company's plant in Decaturville, Tennessee, a plant that's now closed down.
These are kind of pants that...
We made those pants like that, shorts, skirts, jackets.
No problem.
No problem.
When you look at this ad that says...
We showed these former employees an ad aimed at U.S. clothing manufacturers, which reads, Rosa Martinez produces apparel for U.S. markets on her sewing machine in El Salvador. You can hire her for 57 cents an hour. What would be your reaction if I told you that this is advertising for your business to go to El Salvador, where someone will make 57 cents an hour, and that this ad was, in effect, paid for by the U.S. government?
It makes me mad. I mean, me sitting here without a job, and they got nothing to do, and then they take these away. I mean, and I put 29 years of my life in down there. And I'm 51 a year of age as of now, and can't find work. I mean, it's enough to make anybody mad.
I'm not lacking in compassion for the workers.
James Michael is Deputy Director of AID, the United States Agency for International Development, the agency which put up the money for the Rosa Martinez ad that angered those unemployed workers in Tennessee. Let me ask you, with nearly 10 million people unemployed in this country, with 1 in 10 people in this country on food stamps, do you think that it is in our interest to create jobs in Central America through U.S. taxpayer money?
I think that there are not a fixed number of jobs in the world. I think that growth in Latin America creates jobs in the United States.
The richer the Central American countries get, Michael says, the more they'll buy from us.
This year, U.S. exports to Central America will be about $5.8 billion. At 20,000 jobs for every $1 billion in exports, that's over 100,000 U.S. jobs.
But Ray Marshall, who was Secretary of Labor in Jimmy Carter's cabinet and now teaches at the University of Texas, says there just isn't enough purchasing power in Central America to offset the loss of American jobs.
It's supposed to be to our benefit, because now these workers will have some jobs and they can buy things from us. Well, if they're being paid very low wages, subsistence level wage, they're not going to buy much from us.
Bernard Lax, a sweater manufacturer in Los Angeles, has to compete with producers who've moved to Central America. He says our government is encouraging development there at the cost of American jobs. How do you react when you hear that the U.S. government is providing, in effect, subsidies to apparel firms to move to Central America?
I'm very angry about it, because to me it shows that they're turning their back on the American worker. They're turning their back. They keep using the argument that Americans don't really want these jobs, but yet they never give Americans the opportunity to even have these jobs.
At our request, Lax went to the State Department to ask what AID could do for him if he were to shut down in Los Angeles and move to Honduras. They put him in touch with Honduran promoters who told him about a tax provision called 936, which is a bonanza for U.S. businessmen because they're able to get low-cost loans if they move to Central America. Is it a good deal, this 936 money?
Great deal.
Financially?
Great deal.
Why?
Well, you're paying, first of all, the cost of the financing is almost non-existent. The rate that you borrow at is less than, generally 2 basis points less than prime. And so the cost of your financing is almost negligible. I mean, it's almost as if someone's giving you the money to start a business.
This is the worst possible time to be exporting American jobs down here.
In El Salvador, we talked to Congressman George Brown, a California Democrat. We were standing outside of Fusades, a Salvadoran business promotion agency. AID gives Fusades more than 90% of its budget. Last year, in an AID project paper, the agency urged Fusades to target American companies in an effort to get them to come to El Salvador.
They have an aggressive program of recruiting American industry to relocate down in El Salvador. It's directly being subsidized by the American taxpayer, using that money to bring jobs to American companies down here.
Is that what's happening? Not according to AID's James Michael, who insists his agency is not responsible for American businesses moving overseas.
Well, and my assumption is that somebody moves overseas because they can't be competitive for a particular segment of their operation.
The argument here, Mr. Michael, is that's fine. If somebody wants to move overseas, this is the free world.
Yeah.
You can move to wherever you want to. But the United States taxpayer doesn't have to support, through subsidies, your move to Central America when you're going to close down a plant in Tennessee and give jobs to workers in Central America.
Oh, I think that's really a distortion of what we're doing.
We decided to see for ourselves with a hidden camera what AID is doing in Central America. So we sent businessman Lou Thaler, union researcher Charles Kernigan, and 60 Minutes producer David Gelber to Honduras and El Salvador. They posed as executives of a fictitious Miami-based company we called New Age Textiles. We told our Honduran hosts, whose salaries are paid in part by AID, that we were thinking about moving, even though it would mean laying off our workforce in Miami. Our producer, David Gelber, posing as an executive of the company, talked by phone to Scott Taylor, AID's official representative in Honduras. Since Taylor is an American, we thought he'd be reluctant to talk us into doing something which might put other Americans out of work. We were wrong.
We have to be sure that we're going to get the kind of reliability and efficiency in Honduras or Salvador that we get in Miami now.
Right.
And you feel that that's possible?
Well, you know, I do. U.S. firms that have come down here are very happy about that decision.
You're satisfied that we can approximate the reliability that we've come to expect in Miami?
I think you probably find that you could surpass it.
Taylor's boss is James Michael.
At no point did he ever ask what the impact of moving would be on our workers in Miami.
You were talking to someone who obviously was enthused about his perspective of seeing growth in the Honduran economy.
I'm talking to someone who's paid by U.S. taxpayers' dollars, who's promoting jobs outside of this country at the expense of jobs in this country.
I don't accept that it's at the expense of jobs in this country.
We told him, we come down there, we lose jobs here. We made that very clear. We come to Honduras, we lose jobs in Miami. And in essence, he said, come on down.
You're talking to somebody in a country where he's trying to promote economic development. So he might not have a big picture in his conversation with you.
Jim Berg has the big picture and thinks what we uncovered shouldn't be going on. Berg is a top official of another government agency which, like AID, promotes U.S. investment overseas.
If that's what you heard, if that's what you were told, and if that's how you were solicited, that is inconsistent and outside of every government policy that I know about. We can't do that, and we shouldn't do that. The American government has a bond with the American people, and it should not be engaging, if it is, should not be engaging in activities that hurt this economy.
And former Labor Secretary Marshall says it's not just that we're losing jobs.
I think American wages are being ratcheted down. And I have no doubt at all that these kinds of subsidized job activities tend to drive wages down in the United States.
And that's not supposed to happen because of our own trade laws, which are supposed to protect American workers from unfair labor competition. Laws that require that goods made in Central America can enter the United States virtually duty-free only if certain conditions are met.
One condition of these trade benefits is that these countries must recognize basic worker rights.
Internationally recognized workers' rights.
That includes the right to organize,
yes.
the right to bargain collectively.
That's right.
But here's what we found. No less than half a dozen businessmen and officials told the executives of our fictitious company that workers who want to join unions can be fired on the spot and their names placed on blacklists. The manager of this industrial park, financed with U.S. funds, tried to lease us a building with the promise we'd never have to deal with a union.
So we're not going to get people who have a history of labor organizing or that kind of thing.
That's one of our concerns too. You know, we want to have this clean.
If we have somebody who looks like they're going to be a problem as far as a union is concerned, we can tell you about it and you'll take care of it for us?
Yes.
A worker wants to join a union, he or she is fired, and his or her name is put on a blacklist and passed around to the other employers in the zone. They don't get a job. We have that on tape. Is that in violation of those laws?
Well, it sounds very unfortunate. It does not sound to me like anything that ought to happen.
So if an AID official found out about blacklisting in Honduras or El Salvador, what should he do about it?
This would be a subject for typical Foreign Service reporting on labor conditions.
But when we met with the top official of AID in El Salvador, an American named John Sullivan, he assured our executives they shouldn't have a problem with union labor because job applicants are screened by managers of the industrial parks. He put it this way.
There are certain names that we know that you probably will not want to have.
He told us on tape that managers of the zones will screen out potential workers who might want to join a trade union. That was another reason for us to come to El Salvador. We have that on tape. Now, is that what U.S. officials should be doing?
No.
Why would he do that?
I don't know. You are going to have anti-labor biases on the part of employers.
But should we have anti-labor biases on the part of AID officials?
No. The policy is not to encourage violations of workers' rights.
How can something like that take place if it's not part of official policy or official understanding?
I don't know. That bothers me.
At Congressman George Brown's request, the General Accounting Office is investigating claims that AID has encouraged U.S. businessmen to close down factories here and open up shop overseas. AID wrote us insisting it is not their policy to do that.
Take one and action. Hey, what's the best thing about breakfast at McDonald's?
Coffee.
Pour out a cup, it's steaming, it's dark and rich.
I pour it personally.
Coffee fresh?
Fresh brewed. Fantastic cup of coffee.
So what's the secret?
Arabica.
Oh, what's an Arabica?
Arabica beans.
Oh, the beans. And what else?
It's always fresh.
It just tastes good.
And they like to come in and talk with each other, and just like the small coffee shop long ago.
How much a coffee refill?
They're free. What you want is what you get.
Guaranteed.
What's up?
Yeah.
Today, there's the ProStep patch. It's a nicotine transdermal system.
It's a patch.
We just heard about it.
ProStep. It's available only by prescription.
It's ProStep. I'm going to ask my doctor about it.
ProStep.
All pain relievers are not the same. Introducing maximum strength gel caplets from aspirin-free Anacin. Strong against stubborn headaches, easy to swallow, gentle on your stomach. New gel caplets, the newest form in pain relief of aspirin-free Anacin.
You saw General Norman Schwarzkopf lead us to victory in the Persian Gulf. You didn't see him battling it out with Washington. Talking with General Schwarzkopf tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
Monday.
My birthday tomorrow.
Maggie disappears, and guess who's playing Scout?
There's a footprint. You can track it.
On the season premiere.
You learn that or you're born that way.
Northern Exposure.
This neighborhood found a new way to battle the world's oldest profession.
$10.
The problem is, some people say the punishment's worse than the crime. Street Stories with Ed Bradley, Thursday.
In Massachusetts, when they say Mr. President, they don't mean George Bush. There's only one man with that title, Billy Bulger, President of the Massachusetts State Senate. Few legislators in America are as powerful. It's power he's proud to have and not afraid to use. He's not the kind of politician you run across much anymore. And by the way, his brother Whitey is the kind of person you may never want to run across. We'll get to him later. First, Mr. President. No, it's not George M. Cohan. No, it is not Jimmy Cagney playing George M. Cohan. It is a political relic, a throwback to a time of populist politicians who succeeded with street smarts and knowing which strings to pull. Billy Bulger almost defines Boston Irish.
Everybody!
His district is South Boston, home of the legendary boss politician James Michael Curley, whose spirit is alive and well in Bulger. Just watch him hosting his annual St. Patrick's Day breakfast, which begins with a fine Irish anthem,
Heavenly Father.
And of course, a blessing from the parish priest.
Amen.
Father, of course, is one of our best friends, and also he occupies a precinct which is very valuable to us all, because that's where St. Augustine's Cemetery is. You never know the result until the votes have been counted from St. Augustine's Cemetery. And somehow there always seem to be just enough to put you over.
The breakfast is a form of homage to Bulger. Anybody who's ever been anybody in Massachusetts politics pays his tribute by being bludgeoned by Bulger.
My advice is to get here on time from now on.
Ted Kennedy got his when he tried to sass Bulger over where to dump Boston's garbage.
I was wondering where you want me to bring it, Bill. Out of Weston or Wellesley or where is it?
Hyannisport. Did you know Ben Franklin?
There is nothing he enjoys more than taking on a well-bred Yankee with inherited wealth.
Frugality.
Which makes Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld perfect for Bulger's meat axe.
I bet you never bounced a check. Oh, no. I bet you never made out a check.
Bulger's importance is as simple as this. If you want to get something done in Massachusetts, you need him. His fellow senators have elected him president for 15 years, the longest tenure in state history. Bulger knows everything about everyone in state office, and thus knows how to get things done, certainly how to keep things moving.
Those in favor say aye, opposed, no. The ayes have it. The rule is suspended. Third reading of the bill.
Legislators give him what he wants because he knows how to get them what they want.
Let me let you describe yourself as others see you.
Autocratic, dictatorial. Those are the ones. Boss. Those kinds of things.
Iron-fisted.
Quick of the gavel.
The rule is suspended.
The truth of the matter is that this would be a debating society, the Senate, or any legislative body, unless somebody said, at some point, after we finish the debate, and after everyone has had his say, we're going to have some kind of action.
But there is the perception that sooner or later, and generally sooner, Bill Bulger has his way.
On many major matters, I have my way.
When he's not presiding in the Senate chamber, he acts as House historian.
John Parker was the captain of the militia. And
the little Irishman from Southie holding forth in what was once the preserve of the Protestant Brahmins. Bulger's a man of simple taste, but does not mind one bit the office he inherited, much grander even than the governor's.
You came in and you said, thanks, you Yankee Brahmins, for letting us use your country. And everybody laughed and laughed. And so, Mr. President, I want to say to you, thank you so much for letting us use your State House. Thank you.
The Gov is only half kidding. Bulger's been ruthless with state appointees who cross him. He'll freeze salaries. One judge lost most of his staff and did not get a raise for 10 years. Such tales only add to his power.
I heard a joyful song.
The perception of power is just about the same thing as having power. If people think you have it, you have it.
And you do nothing to discourage that perception.
And there's value in it, for me.
It can be very useful, as in the case of Boston Edison.
Of course. Yeah.
They were polluting the air.
Right.
Particularly polluting South Boston, your constituency.
Right.
What'd you do about it?
I called them in and reasoned with them.
It was impossible, they said. I said, well, you're going to gas very soon. I said, you either go to gas or the Mass Turnpike extension goes right through your plant. I reasoned with them.
When you say, kidding, folks, the extension of the Mass Turnpike will be at your front door, it's a joke, everybody knows it's a joke, but it also enhances the reputation that on the real stuff,
Right.
he is going to be that tough.
Yeah. There's something to that. I think it's the healthiest thing in the democracy that the people who are elected are not afraid to assert power. I think it's a very good thing.
Especially for Bulger's favorite things, like the Boston Public Library. When it desperately needed restoration money, he came up with a $35 million bill overnight.
Somehow, when they need the money, they get the money.
As they should. As they should. I mean, it's a bastion of our civilization. People who are reading a book are people whose minds are engaged.
When Father McDonald needed money for the disabled, he went to the Senate president.
And it happened, right? Oh, it happened, yeah. God was good that day.
I, William Weld.
In the beginning, Governor Weld attacked Bulger's backroom tactics.
Congratulations.
But he soon discovered that the wisest thing a Republican governor could do was to get along with the Senate president. And together, they've turned the state's budget crisis around. Away from work, they've become a Mutt and Jeff vaudeville act.
Anyone who's been in politics as long as Bulger has, especially in the fertile turf of Boston politics, is bound to be accused of corruption. And reporters here have been trying to pin stuff on him for years. But according to the columnist for the Boston Globe, Mike Barnacle, that chronicler of all things Bostonian, by local standards, he's clean.
I've never heard a story about any lobbyist or corporation having the arm put on them by Bill Bulger.
But what about jobs for the boys?
Jobs for the boys is not viewed, and girls now, is not viewed in his mind, or in that neighborhood, or I think in many neighborhoods when you get right down to it, as corruption. They refer to it as taking care of your own.
Bulger is said to be a champion of that, especially liberal with jobs at the MBTA, known as Mr. Bulger's Transit Authority.
Wacko, step up here.
Wacko Hurley, for example. What a name, what a face.
One word says it all.
Wacko organizes the St. Patrick's Day Parade in South Boston from his office at the MBTA.
Welcome. How are you?
Billy Bulger seems to know just about all of his constituents by name.
Here's Kenny. How you doing, Al?
He invites them to his modest home where he and his wife Mary raised 9 kids.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
What you're watching is old-fashioned Boston politics at work, in which patronage is the first rule of life.
Okay. We'll do anything humanly possible.
Boston newspapers blast him for patronage. In return, he does everything he can to discredit journalism in general and the Boston Globe in particular.
It's authentic. He feels it. He hates us. And when he does it, it helps him in South Boston because it's his thumb in our eye, something they have always wanted to do.
The first day I went into office, Marty Nolan from the Globe said, "Well, Mr. President, looks like a nice day, doesn't it?" I says, "Never mind your trick questions." And we've been getting along fine ever since.
When he gets talking about the Globe, it's almost as if he's going to have to stop and get a venom transplant to continue.
Oh, do I hate that newspaper. I mean, the editorials over there, it has to be an opium den.
Bulger keeps the tension with the press alive by not granting interviews.
I mean, who the hell are they?
And he was reluctant to do one with us, as the former state treasurer, Mr. Crane, reminded him.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that show.
Oh.
You'll wish it was 60 seconds.
What Mr. Crane might have been jabbing his good friend about is the sensitive issue of Billy Bulger's brother, James, known as Whitey, a convicted felon who served time in prisons, including Alcatraz, for bank robbery, and has since become, according to the feds, one of the most feared mobsters in Boston.
He's a big guy. He's a major league figure. Can't get around it.
Does Whitey have the same contempt for the press as Bill does?
I hope not.
Some people might go to great pains to distance themselves, disown even a brother who went wrong. You've not done that.
No. He's my brother. I care about him.
You see him?
Oh, sure. I encourage him to come by all of the time.
Apart from his convictions, there was little known about Whitey Bulger, but then last year, he made the score of his life. And he turned up here to collect. Whitey and two colleagues had the winning ticket in the Massachusetts State Lottery. The prize, $14 million. But was it his ticket?
No, it was not his ticket. It belonged to, I think, Mikey Linsky, who I think was probably told, you know, a couple of hours after the numbers came up that he had partners, that he had a couple of partners that he, you know, really, you know, couldn't live without, literally.
There was a lot of suspicion. The Senate president's brother wins the lottery. Come on, right?
Sure.
How'd you handle that?
I sort of just met it head on and told everybody, well, you know, when we won, or rather when he won the lottery, that kind of thing. Aha, they'd say.
And now I lay me down to slumber. I pray to heaven I hit the number. If I die before I wake, put $10 on 436-708. My brother wrote that prayer.
The Bulger brothers, the bad one and the good one, seem out of some old Hollywood movie. Billy, the educated classicist, who does not own a television, still reads Latin and Greek books, always a song in his heart and on his lips. And yet, true or not, a shadow of menace.
Now, I don't know of anyone that he's ever done anything to, but there is this myth that a lot of people live with that, you know, if I do this and he doesn't like it, either he will get me or, God forbid, he might say my name at lunch with Jimmy someday.
Morley's going to be good to me, aren't you, Morley? That's how they all start out. I'm your pal. What is it?
You just remember, I'm editing it.
Grab your camera and get out of here.
Billy Bulger says he seeks no higher office, that he's unelectable outside of South Boston, that other world filled with Protestants and Boston Globe readers. But year after year, his colleagues re-elect him as Senate President, afraid perhaps of that power, or of Whitey, or maybe they're just in awe of a masterful politician. The editorialists of Boston may call for his blood, but for Southey, it'll be some time before Billy Bulger's last hurrah is heard.
They'll make you, they'll break you, but they'll never forsake you. In Southie, my hometown.
Let me have your attention for a moment.
4 stars for Glengarry Glen Ross.
This is how we keep score, booby.
So good, it's almost scary.
You don't like it? Leave.
Jack Lemmon should be nominated for an Academy Award.
Put me on the Cadillac board.
Pacino is in top form.
Yes, I confess.
Baldwin is mesmerizing.
Hit the bricks, pal, and beat it.
Easily the best film of the year.
That's right.
From the Pulitzer Prize winner, Glengarry Glen Ross, rated R. Starts Wednesday in New York and L.A., Friday everywhere.
Who are you going to call the most this month?
Most?
Good question.
Isabel. With Sprint's new program, The Most, first, you get 20% off whoever you call the most each month. Second, you get 20% off calls to any of the millions of other Sprint customers automatically.
Sprint interrupts this commercial for a special announcement. An independent consumer group has announced that of unrestricted plans, The Most from Sprint often offers the best savings with the fewest restrictions.
60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Tonight, Jessica uncovers a 30-year-old murder,
There was something different at work here.
exposing a dark secret that could destroy Cabot Cove on Murder, She Wrote. Then, she was addicted to the only man she couldn't have,
Where were you tonight? Calling her?
her husband.
You're out of your mind.
She can no longer live in a house of secrets and lies. Tonight, abused from birth, she was capable of murder. Mel Harris and Mariette Hartley fight to win her love. Child of Rage, Tuesday.
This is CBS. 1992 is Cadillac's year. STS, Seville, Eldorado. Now you can drive a brand new 92 Eldorado for under $15,000. That's right, lease an Eldorado for 30 months, and the total of your payments, including a $1,500 down payment, is under $15,000, thanks to a special factory-to-dealer incentive. See your Cadillac Super Network dealer now, because this offer will not last long. Drive a new Eldorado for under $15,000. Hurry, don't miss out.
The Infiniti G20 has been described as one of the best handling luxury sedans in the world. But what comes with the car is just as impressive as what's inside of it. Like the 24-hour roadside assistance program to make sure you're never alone. Because no man is an island, even if she lives on one.
Take a ride on the wild side with Cops, weekdays at 5 on Channel 10.
Just think how angry you'd be if the only product on the market that would keep your child alive turned out to be contaminated with the HIV virus and that your child had AIDS or was likely to get it. Now add to that the product in question could cost as much as $200,000 a year, and there's no way you can afford it. That's exactly the situation facing thousands of families of hemophiliacs who were put on this product to stop their bleeding before anyone realized that the blood supply in this country wasn't safe. Why is this product so expensive? It's so expensive because to be effective as a clotting factor, and that's what it's called, clotting factor, it has to be distilled from the blood of 20,000 donors. That's also why it wreaks such havoc among hemophiliacs. Clotting factor first came on the market in the late 1960s when people were unaware of AIDS and the blood supply wasn't as carefully screened as it is now. But the cost of doing just that today, cleaning it up, has made this one of the most expensive items in health care. Virtually no one can afford it. And when you add the cost of AIDS, what you're getting is financial ruin for thousands of Americans. Take the Coons family. 13-year-old Michael Coons is one of the hemophiliacs who got AIDS from the clotting factor. When he was 3 years old, he had his tonsils out and needed infusions of the clotting factor. Unfortunately, this was in 1982, before the blood supply had been cleaned up.
Can we have you lie down here? Don't step on your brother.
Right now, he feels all right much of the time.
Did you compete against him? Who wins?
Me. But increasingly, there have been more and more stays in the hospital. Over the last 5 years, the medical bills have been overwhelming. His parents, Carolyn and Michael Coons.
His AIDS expenses alone, I'd say somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 just this last month.
1 month for Michael.
Yes.
Yep.
Can we take a listen?
As if the cost of AIDS were not bad enough, Michael's expenses as a hemophiliac are hitting this family with a whole separate set of bills. When he had surgery in April 1992, his bill for the clotting factor alone came to over $20,000.
One of these little bottles that costs $1,000. This is...
Show us one of the, can you show us the bottle? One bottle.
Yeah, it costs $1,000 for the treatment.
That costs $1,000. And
Yeah.
how many, what is it, a shot?
It's an infusion,
Yeah,
yes.
an infusion. He was on this for 10 days, and he had to have it twice a day.
Twice a day at $1,000 for each one.
Right.
So that's $2,000 a day just for this.
Right.
The Coons family has been paying bills like this for the last 5 years, and almost every month, even with her husband's insurance, The balance unpaid keeps getting higher and higher. Just last April, Carolyn herself qualified for insurance at her full-time job. But even with that, they are barely making a dent in the old bills.
I'm just going to give these guys half because that's what I can afford to give them this month.
They've sometimes had to get help to pay the mortgage, and their church has helped out with food.
We're still paying off old bills from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. We have old bills and outstanding bills and new bills and incoming bills. I mean, the impact of that was just astronomical on our family. Just, you know, we took out a $7,000 loan we consolidated just to pay off medical because we had all these bills, like 20, 30, coming in the mail every month, and they get overwhelming. And then we still had our second mortgage that we took out to pay off medical bills also. And, you know, we're still paying on that.
Carolyn Coons feels that she should not be working. She should be at home with her children while they need her at this time. But she has no choice because she needs the health insurance to stay afloat. Her husband's insurance won't cover all the expenses. And when she applied for government assistance, she was told no.
There is nothing available for middle class because I have applied for just about everything that you could apply for. And I said, all I need is just to help with the medical. I don't want money. I just need help with our medical. And they just wrote down on a piece of paper that AIDS was not a medical emergency. And I felt like I was just being laughed at, and I just walked out of there in tears. I thought, this is our system. This isn't really working, you know.
Bankruptcy has certainly reared its head once or twice. Well, not once or twice, a lot of times.
Here at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, a recent study was done of people who filed for bankruptcy, and the university was surprised at the result. Professor Elizabeth Warren headed the study.
One of the things we found was that medical debt is the single most frequently listed debt for those who go into bankruptcy. More than half of all the people who filed for bankruptcy in the United States in our study had some sort of medical debt.
If you went bankrupt, how would you pay the medical bill?
Well, we've got an attorney friend that talked to us about that, and his comment was you wait until after Michael dies when all these expenses are huge, then you go under. In the meantime, he says you just do the best that you can.
As if the heartache of Michael's condition and the financial burden weren't hard enough, other parents in similar circumstances are telling the Coonses that the best way to make it is to go on welfare. But to do that, Michael and Carolyn would have to get a divorce, something they have actually given serious thought to.
If we separated legally or divorced, we would be eligible for everything. Michael would be eligible for benefits. I mean, he would be eligible for Medicaid. He'd be eligible for SSI, SSD. You know, it would just be...
Wait a minute. You're saying that if you two split up as a family and you, the father, were no longer in the home, then none of this would be a problem.
Right. That's right. And it's been done. I got the idea because I was talking to a couple other people.
You mean there are families who actually split up in order to get the insurance money from Medicaid?
Yes.
They have no other choice.
They
It's
have no
either
other
that
choice.
or they don't get care for their child.
That's right.
Here's one woman who's done just what Carolyn and Michael have only been talking about doing. Her daughter is also suffering from AIDS from contaminated blood. She and her husband divorced so that her daughter would qualify for Medicaid and government assistance. There's a reason she can't show her face.
Well, what do? You're now, at this point, legally divorced, and you're told you can't live together. What do?
I told him I lived with my mother.
Do you?
No.
Who do you live with?
I live with my ex-husband and my daughter.
And you?
And me.
Lie.
Yes.
What do you tell your daughter?
If anybody ever asks you, you have to say, we live with your grandmother.
If the authorities find out, if Social Security finds out, if the Food Stamp Administration finds out that you're still living with your ex-husband, what will they do?
They'll take away all my benefits and I'll live on the streets.
Larky DeNeff is on welfare, even though he has a master's degree. He's on welfare because he's a severe hemophiliac with AIDS. His partner, Beth Weinstein, caught the virus from him, but she has had no health problems so far. This couple would like to be married, but it would jeopardize his medical benefits, so they can't. Denef lives on welfare because the cost of the clotting factor alone is around $200,000 a year. On top of this, the cost of treating AIDS is $50,000. Even if he were working, which he would rather be doing, most private insurance policies have a maximum lifetime benefit of $1 million, which he would reach very quickly.
But you don't earn any money.
Correct.
Because, is it because of AIDS, or is it because if you went to work, you wouldn't get the Medicare and the Medicaid?
Any month that I earn over $90, they cut off the SSI, and that means the state of Oregon cuts off the Medicaid.
We talked about getting married. We very much wanted to be married, and we're not.
Now, why can't you get married?
Well, we could get married, but Beth would have to shed herself of the modest annuity from her father, her home, her car, give up earning money for a career.
If you got married? Why?
Because the state Medicaid guidelines in Oregon look at your assets, and they only allow you to earn up to 54% of the poverty level.
We would have to live at half the poverty level. I'm not willing to do that.
So you earn money?
I earn money.
Do you live together?
He rents a room in my house.
Right now, Denef must take his dose of clotting factor 10 to 15 times a month to enable his blood to clot in a normal way. The factor he's taking now is, of course, free of the HIV virus. But in 1982, when he became infected, the blood was still dirty.
When you got HIV, did the blood companies and did the Red Cross know that the blood supply was tainted?
I believe that they knew in 1982 that there was a problem because we had seen 3 hemophiliacs who had developed full AIDS.
How many hemophiliacs do you know personally who got AIDS?
I know about 200 to 250 hemophiliacs, and I know about 5 or 10 that didn't get infected.
But wait a minute, we're talking about a 90% plus of every hemophiliac who took this factor between when and when?
Between the early 70s and the early 80s.
Got AIDS? This is a generation wiped out.
And it's a generation wiped out by the very thing that gave us life and normality. It's very ironic. That's part of why it's been so hard to change things in the hemophilia community is nobody wanted to believe that this thing was transmitting HIV.
They were denying it themselves for so long.
I found incredible rejection from the leadership, from other hemophiliacs, from the doctors. Nobody wanted to admit it or talk about it. They said this was a gay disease, it's not going to affect us, and who wants to be associated with the gay community, and the IV drug abusing community was their message. I got support from nowhere except the gay community. The gay community taught me how to survive HIV disease, and I don't think I'd be here today unless I had reached out to them and built a bridge.
I mean, it's the most frustrating story you could ever tell.
It is.
I think that it's very frustrating, and I feel that the hemophiliac population is devastated. These families are already dealing with expensive, extremely expensive blood products, on top of having the severe complications and medical problems that go along with AIDS and then the expensive bills from that. So they are hit double.
So far, the Coons family has been able to stay together, still able to get together for things like the children's high school concert.
My biggest worry is, will our family be able to stay together? Will we be able to stay intact? We are very family-oriented, and it's very much a part of our church. And that is one of my biggest fears, is that we'll split up. I shouldn't be working. I really shouldn't be.
But Carolyn Coons also knows that probably the only way she'll get to spend more time with her son is to stop working, get a divorce, and go on welfare. That's the way the system is set up for the families we've seen today.
Carolyn Coons never got her wish to spend more time with her son. Michael died last week of complications from AIDS.
Canon CJ10. The power of color is yours.
How can Healthy Choice prepare a complete chicken parmigiana dinner that gives you less and more? By rewriting the entire recipe. Instead of simply giving you less fat, Healthy Choice selects more lean breast meat for more flavor. And there's not just less salt. Our sauce is brimming with luscious tomatoes, carefully seasoned with herbs and spices for more taste. Chicken Parmigiana dinner from Healthy Choice. Never settle for less. They're tiny portraits of a people. They sing of our heroes and celebrate our homeland. There are as many reasons to love stamps as there are people who love them. These are stamps worth saving. Ask for the World War II stamps at your post office now.
Some investments seem absolutely safe. Yet even playing it safe carries risks, because inflation and interest rates can devastate both the value of an investment and the income it yields. Smith Barney constantly monitors risk to help shape your financial future by choice, not chance. Smith Barney, they make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it.
Every once in a while, everybody in the news business gets accused of conspiring to suppress a story. The conspiracy that comes up most often these days is the Rodney King beating. Andy?
Everyone has seen the pictures of the Los Angeles police beating Rodney King more times than is necessary. Television news has used almost any excuse to repeat it, I know that. Within the past month, I've had several letters accusing television news, and me as an incidental part of it, of not letting the public see all of that tape. They say we hid the first part of the tape that provoked the cops into beating King. On September 15th, an organization known as Accuracy in Media ran a full-page ad in the New York newspaper. The ad said, "We're fed up with negative, one-sided, deceptive TV news." There's several things I agree with in this ad. I agree that, generally speaking, network news people are liberal. I guess I'd say I have a liberal bias myself most of the time. Further down, the ad said, "We're disgusted at the way you repeatedly showed us a videotape of Los Angeles police officers beating Rodney King, but edited out the first part where Rodney King attacks the police." I've been in this business for long enough to know that there isn't any way you could get ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN to agree on a conspiracy to keep anything away from the public. Last week, I got hold of the complete Rodney King tape, all of it. I'd never seen it myself. It runs 9 minutes and 25 seconds. What most of us saw runs for 40 or 50 seconds. We're going to show you the beginning of that tape, the part you never saw. You can believe it is the beginning because it starts with a few pictures that the cameraman took of two people sitting on a couch in his own apartment. Then the beginning, Rodney King on the ground. He gets up, either falls or lunges. It goes out of focus. Then the part you've seen begins. Here it is one more time in slow motion. We're not going to show you the part that you've seen over and over again. The rest of the tape, about 7.5 minutes, shows Rodney King on the ground, hogtied, and the police milling around, getting ready to leave. You can decide for yourself if you think we've been part of a conspiracy to hide something from you.
I'm Steve Croft. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.
long-distance prices are from a study of phone usage undertaken not by AT&T or MCI, but by a totally independent consumer organization. Their exhaustive study compares apples to apples and oranges to oranges. It concludes that with the right phone service, consumers can see significant savings, and we agree. Call MCI and we'll send you the complete study. Or call AT&T and ask if they will.
There's something about Anacin you probably don't know. Anacin is such a strong pain reliever, headache sufferers find Anacin more effective than regular strength aspirin against stubborn headache pain. Rediscover Anacin for stubborn headache pain.
Richard Gere, Kim Basinger. Critics call Final Analysis seductive, sizzling, and suspenseful. A winner of a thriller. Final Analysis. Look for it on videocassette.
It used to be California, here we come. Now it's let's get out of here. What's happened to the California dream? Find out on Eye on America tomorrow on the CBS Evening News.
Monday, Murphy and the baby go back to work.
Testing 1, 2, 3. It's a breast pump, Miles.
Emmy Award-winning Murphy Brown. Then, is the new love and war romance just too good to be true?
No ice pick under here.
And the season premiere of Northern Exposure.
How does it feel to be 30?
You get crow's feet. Your bum turns to yogurt.
A night of all-new hit comedy Monday.
Well, if you say one good word about me, I'll demand a retraction.
Facing Monday is much easier now that the CBS Monday night comedies are back. All new Evening Shade, Hearts of Fire, Emmy-winning Murphy Brown, Love and War, and the season premiere of Emmy winner Northern Exposure. Monday night, it's never been funnier. Now get ready for Murder, She Wrote, next.
That's an Irish
For a transcript of this program, send $5 to Burrell's Transcripts, Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039. And to purchase video cassettes of tonight's stories, call 1-800-848-3256.
Experience CBS News.
Check out Evening Shade and see what develops.
Holy, just Kleenex. That's what I use.
She could put somebody's eye out with one of those things. Comedy is busting out all over on Evening Shade. Then, the critics agree Hearts doesn't miss a beat.
You think because you spring for an orchestra to stay late, that entitles you to some kind of sexual favors?
Yes, I do. Hearts of Fire right after Evening Shade Monday. Live from the Grand Ole Opry, it's the hottest night in country music. Join hosts Reba McEntire and Vince Gill for the 26th Annual Country Music Awards, Wednesday.
A race with death.
Thanks for all your help, man.
A subway heist.
3 inches of steel in 92 seconds.
A cold-blooded maniac.
There's a child in the house.
A young hostage.
We're here to protect you.
Time is running out.
We're moving, Maddie.
The Hat Squad, Wednesday.
This is CBS.
Just because the Honda Accord is the #1 selling car in America, comes with a standard driver's side airbag and available anti-lock brakes, doesn't necessarily mean it's out of reach. Because during a Ford and Accord days, you'll find Accords are lower than ever. So visit your tri-state Honda dealer now. Because if you come down, we'll come down too.
Here's your advertising idea for Canada Dry Lemon Ginger Ale.
Lemon. Lemon Man. And he says, I'm less sweet. Do you, Lemon, take the less sweet taste of ginger ale? I do. I do.
Canada Dry Lemon Ginger Ale has less sugar than most leading soft drinks. It's less sweet. What a refreshing idea.
It's less sweet. Right, Dummy?
Family Feud, weeknights at 7:30 on Channel 10.
Tonight on Murder, She Wrote. Hello, is anyone there?
I'll tell you the whole story. One thing's for sure, it's going to shake this town right down to the ground.
I strongly suggest you not write that book.
You left out the or else. Something terribly wrong happened here 30 years ago.
The truth is really popular. Sometimes it's downright dangerous. Then we'll just have to stop him, won't we?
Would someone like to tell me what all of this Mad Maggie business is all about?
The inquest ruled it's accidental, but there's always been some doubt.
This isn't even about us anymore. It's about you and your father.
Owen Cooper was killed by a shotgun blast at point-blank range.
Now you can have that fruity taste. Now the Jell-O puts the wiggle in a cup.
Introducing Jell-O Gelatin Snacks. Ready to eat in individual cups. It's refreshing, it's fruity, it's fun.
Now the Jell-O puts the wiggle in a cup.
In your grocer's dairy case.
It's a make-you-whoop thing with Ted Danson, Melissa Etheridge live, and comic Ellen DeGeneres on Arsenio.
Monday at 11:30 on Fox 29.
And now, the Delaware Valley's only primetime news hour. Fox 29's The 10 O'Clock News.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rich Noonan.
And I'm Tracy Matisak. Here's what's happening. The verdict is in for Senator Arlen Specter and Democratic challenger Lynn Yackel. The two Pennsylvania Senate candidates went word for word today in front of a citizens jury. Rich Maneri reports.
Small business. Can you please explain how you're going to help small business?
I can by continuing my active support for the Small Business Administration.
Are you willing to reduce the quality of health care or its general availability in order to reduce costs?
No, and there would be no reason at all to reduce quality of health care.
For 1.5 hours each, Senator Arlen Specter and Senate candidate Lynn Yackel were grilled by a 17-member panel called the Citizens Jury. The jury is made up of ordinary Pennsylvanians who asked the candidates questions on the economy, education, and health care. The League of Women Voters sponsored the debate, which is supposed to give voters more ammunition to make a choice on Election Day.
Would you consider women and minorities as special interests, and should more attention be paid attention to them when it comes in terms to jobs?
We must look at policies that promote equity and justice for people who have been left out of the system. And that, again, is one of the reasons that I am in this race.
How do you propose to ensure that all Americans are covered by health care?
Why should we scrap a system which now covers 86%, covers 218 million people? The point is to cover the other 37 million people, and we have specific mechanisms which I think will cover a great number.
And how was it for the candidates in the hot seat?
There are many tense moments. How would I evaluate my performance in there? I wouldn't.
You'd have to ask the jurors about my performance. The process is difficult because it means, you know, really knowing and understanding these very difficult issues.
After the question and answer period, the jury went behind closed doors to deliberate. Their charge, to offer a verdict, which is an evaluation of the two candidates, not an endorsement of either.
Those that gave Lincoln.
Almost 5 hours later, the jury had reached its decision. On a scale of 1 to 10, Arlen Specter was the winner in all three categories: the economy, education, and health care.
These are opinions, and hopefully the people that read or catch this on the news will see more than just the headlines.
The jury's decision is not likely to tip the balance of an election, but this has been a nasty campaign. What the citizens' jury has done, say its organizers, is take the spotlight off personalities and turn it on issues. In Center City, Rich Maneri, the 10 o'clock news.
President Bush has wrapped up his whistle-stop train tour of the Midwest. Today, Mr. Bush told crowds in Michigan if Bill Clinton wins, his environmental positions would cost 40,000 auto workers their jobs. The president then hammered Clinton's environmental record in Arkansas.
Europe are enduring higher unemployment. I don't want to suggest that the Arkansas rivers are polluted, but you know Governor Clinton sometimes thinks he can walk on water.
The president
living around the Arkansas River, he can walk on water.
There we go. The president told reporters today he feels confident about the momentum of the campaign and he will be re-elected. Democrat Bill Clinton is also working the Midwest this weekend. He appeared at the annual steak fry held by Iowa Senator Tom Harkin today. Mr. Clinton denied charges that he is slowing down and campaigning like a front-runner afraid to make a mistake. The Democratic nominee said he is not slowing down and intends to play offense until Election Day.
Will he or won't he re-enter the race for president? That is the question both candidates are asking of Ross Perot tonight. Tomorrow, aides to Bush and Clinton will meet with Perot's people in Dallas to talk up their economic strategy. Perot says if he doesn't like what he hears, he just might throw his hat back into the ring. With a host of disgruntled Ross Perot voters hanging in the balance, each of the presidential candidates is scrambling to show how his economic strategy fits perfectly with Perot's.
Ross Perot says, correctly, you can't address the deficit problem unless you address the entitlement structure and the mandatory portion of the government. He proposes a few $100 billion. That happens to be just about what we propose in savings under that heading. Governor Clinton proposes one little tiny program change of about $1.8 billion out of a $1 trillion entitlement structure.
Clinton, on the other hand, says his aides will make a simple, straightforward presentation to Perot's people tomorrow to prove that his plan most closely resembles Perot's. But as the candidates campaign for the all-important Perot vote, a new CBS News poll shows Perot's negative rating at just under 50%, high enough to raise questions about how successful another run for the White House would be.
It seems to me that he is not going to be anywhere near the significant factor that he might have been had he continued that campaign.
I think there is a sizable faction of the American voters that are totally dissatisfied with the two candidates. So much so that many say if Perot's not in it, not even going to vote, which I think would be a tragedy. I think he will be a strong player in this campaign and in the election.
Perot dropped out of the race July 16th and insists he doesn't want the job, but he says he'll make a run for it if supporters ask him to.
Striking teachers in Abington have rejected the school board's proposal to end their week-long walkout. Teachers call the proposal totally unacceptable. They are fighting mad over what they say are unfair labor practices by the school board. The union says it is time for the school district to make some concessions at the negotiating table, and they have not done so far.
Negotiation involves two groups. It involves two groups having some give and take. We would be very happy to negotiate as soon as we're called by the mediator again. We are going back to our office to call the mediator and tell her we are ready to negotiate again.
Teachers have lowered their salary demands to just under a 7% raise over 2 years. They went on strike last Monday. Under a new state law, teachers will be ordered back to work within 2 weeks.
There has been little progress this weekend in informal talks between Philadelphia and its unions. Today, union workers were at the Puerto Rican parade to protest what they call Mayor Rendell's anti-worker stance. The unions remain unhappy with the last best offer implemented by the mayor last week. The two sides met informally throughout the weekend. Those talks have been put on hold for the Jewish holiday.
Coming up tonight, the search for peace in South Africa hits a snag.
Later, Gloria Estefan headlines a benefit concert to help victims of Hurricane Andrew.
Long-distance prices are from a study of phone usage undertaken not by AT&T or MCI, but by a totally independent consumer organization. Their exhaustive study compares apples to apples and oranges to oranges. It concludes that with the right phone service, consumers can see significant savings, and we agree. Call MCI and we'll send you the complete study. Or call AT&T and ask if they will.
In the real world, there can be only one single best time to buy a new car. The real clearance. And you're looking at it.
It's truly a buyer's market on 92 Grand Voyagers at your Chrysler Plymouth dealer. Get real advantages like $1,000 cash back and even more room for your family.
The real clearance simply means the best deals of the year. You want real advantages for the real world? You're looking at them. The real model year-end clearance, now at your Chrysler Plymouth dealers.
Amazing, but true. Starting Monday, you can get 2 tempting Big Mac sandwiches for just $2 at McDonald's.
What you want is what you get at McDonald's today.
Of course, they won't be spinning around like this. Starting Monday, you can get 2 hot egg McMuffin sandwiches at breakfast for just $2. That's 2 for $2 at McDonald's, but not in this commercial.
What you want is what you get at McDonald's today.
Maybe it's over here.
This is about driving, so it's about your car. This is about loving to drive, so it's about choosing the right gasoline. This is about quality, so it's about Sunoco. This is about excitement, so it's about Ultra 94. This is about performance, so it's about advanced detergency in every grade. This is about wanting it all and getting it all. So like we said, this is about Sunoco.
You get the idea.
Then get to the phone and pick out your halftime package now.
163 people are dead after a plane crash in Nigeria. Officials say the military transport plane went down just minutes after takeoff from Lagos. It crashed in a swamp. There were no survivors. The passengers were high-ranking military officers who were heading home after a Navy celebration in Lagos. The cause is under investigation tonight.
South Africa's peace process was dealt a blow today when the Zulu Inkatha party pulled out of the talks. The head of the Inkatha party says the government is trying to prevent his people from getting involved in the process. There were high hopes yesterday after President F.W. de Klerk met with African National Congress leader Nelson Mandela. Today's announcement sparked a surge in South Africa's ongoing political violence. In Bosnia, bombs rained down on Sarajevo today, and heavy fighting was reported throughout the city. Serbian and Muslim troops exchanged heavy artillery fire in the suburbs. United Nations peace envoys Cyrus Vance and Lord Owen are expected in Belgrade tomorrow. They will meet with Serbian leaders in an effort to end attacks on Bosnian refugees and humanitarian relief flights.
Pope John Paul II returned to the Vatican for the first time since colon surgery in July. 50,000 people packed St. Peter's Square to hear the pontiff celebrate Mass. The 72-year-old Pope's voice weakened a couple of times during the 2-hour service, but overall he appeared to be in very good health. John Paul had a benign tumor removed from his colon on July 15th. Sundown tonight marked the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. For the next 10 days, Jews will ask forgiveness for their sins. According to Jewish tradition, people can change their fate for the coming year through prayer and good deeds over the next 10 days. At the end of that period comes Yom Kippur, a day of atonement.
In other news tonight, Clarence Thomas may well be remembered for how he became a Supreme Court justice than for what he accomplishes on the bench. A year after his confirmation, the Anita Hill hearings are still talked about. But today, a Philadelphia colleague graded Thomas on his record as a justice. Farland Chang has more.
There has never been an appointment of an African American that divided the black community as much as the nomination of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. 1 year later, African Americans at the White Rock Baptist Church reflected on the event. They heard from one of Thomas's colleagues, federal judge Leon Higginbotham, Jr.
When a black person joins in an opinion which is particularly harsh and unfair to black people, the damage is worse because it leaves the impression. Why are these colored folks complaining?
The judge says Justice Thomas has already voted against African Americans in 2 cases, one against the Voting Rights Act, the other favoring the police over people accused of crimes. Higginbotham recently wrote an open letter to Thomas, to which he received no answer.
It is because Justice Thomas has the power to determine the plight of all Americans, and particularly of the disadvantaged, women, minorities, and the powerless, that I wrote to him.
He adds that Justice Thomas has failed to fill the shoes of retired Justice Thurgood Marshall because Thomas lacks the same compassion. Higginbotham called on his fellow church members to support judges, not based on color, but on soul. Many agreed.
You have a man like Chief Justice Earl Warren, he was white. His heart's right.
But not everyone opposed Thomas.
I still feel that he's a strong, positive influence on the young black youth of America.
Judge Higginbotham hopes that Judge Thomas will not forget his roots and somehow evolve into a good judge. After 1 year, though, Judge Higginbotham's doubts have only grown. In West Philadelphia, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Madison.
And I'm Jacqueline Bolden. Here's what's happening. Like the night before final exams, this is the night before the first big debate for the 3 presidential candidates. And George Bush and Bill Clinton are cramming. The debate comes at a critical time for Mr. Bush, who's having a hard time gaining ground in the polls. The latest poll by Newsweek magazine shows that Mr. Bush's attacks on Clinton have not improved his standing. Clinton still leads 44 to 35%. Independent candidate Ross Perot has 12%. The numbers are pretty much the same as last week's Newsweek poll, when Clinton had 44%, Mr. Bush 36%, and Perot 14%. Clinton took some time out this morning from his studying to take part in a run in Kansas City to raise money for a 17-month-old leukemia victim. In Washington, a steady stream of cars delivered senior Bush advisors to the White House for a study session and a mock debate. And Perot, who's running a campaign of TV ads, has remained out of sight. It is estimated that 66 million people will tune in to watch the debate. And as Bonnie Anderson reports, construction workers have been busy transforming the Washington University gym into a suitable setting.
It is a serious game of jockeying for position. For the campaigns, how the candidates look is nearly as crucial as what they say during the debate. Virtually every detail of the setup has been negotiated, from the number of parking passes to the color of credentials issued the campaigns. Even the location of the 3 identical holding rooms for the candidates, complete with identical furniture and bathrooms, was the product of twice-daily summit meetings with debate officials. But some of the most critical decisions, such as where the candidates stand on stage, were decided by coin tosses.
It'll be left to right, Perot, Clinton, Bush.
While Bush campaign officials believe Clinton has an advantage being in the middle, Clinton workers say poor spacing among the podiums could make the man in the middle look like he's watching a tennis match. And with just hours left before the debate, there are still unresolved procedural matters.
The way the candidates come on is the most serious problem we have right now. When you have 3 candidates and only 2 entrances, 1 on each side, we have to make a decision. I suppose their people see some tactical advantage to the way they come on.
And how tall they are. There is talk about having Ross Perot, who is 8 inches shorter than Bush and Clinton, stand on a box so that camera angles are equal.
There's a question as to whether or not the other candidates are going to agree to that, but we're prepared to do it.
Debate officials say they've also taken precautions to prevent the technical snafus that marred past debates. Each candidate has 2 backup microphones. Camera positions are duplicated, and the air conditioning system is set at a sweat-free 70 degrees. For the city of St. Louis, hosting the first presidential debate has been a financial boon this economically depressed area desperately needed. Many hotels are fully booked for the first time in years, and in terms of exposure, city officials say they could never have afforded this amount of publicity.
The price tag could be billions, because for 90 minutes, you know, the eyes of the world are going to be on St. Louis.
And on the candidates. In what is being billed as a make-or-break series of debates, how they do here could set the tone for how they do in November. Bonnie Anderson, St. Louis.
The national debate that President Bush has been trying to spark over Bill Clinton's patriotism hasn't caught on with voters, according to polls. But as Jill Doherty reports, that won't discourage the president from bringing it up in St. Louis tomorrow.
For the real debate, Bush has given every sign he'll keep attacking Clinton's anti-war protests as a question of judgment, despite a backlash by critics who say he's impugning Clinton's patriotism.
I'm standing with American principle. It is wrong to demonstrate against your country when your country's at war.
But Bush does appear to have backed off from questioning Clinton's 1969 visit to Moscow, despite the encouragement of conservative Congressman Robert Dornan, who says Bush should not only use it in Sunday's debate, but that his re-election hinges on the patriotism issue.
If he backs away from it, he loses, period.
But Democratic Senator Bob Kerrey, who lost a leg in Vietnam, says it's irrelevant and a losing strategy.
I disagree with the president when he says it's wrong to have demonstrated against our government's policies in 1969. I came back from the war and demonstrated as well.
A poll taken after the attacks on Clinton shows they're not helping the president. A Newsweek survey shows almost 2/3 think Bush engaged in unfair criticism regarding the anti-war demonstrations and the Moscow visit. The White House has been downplaying the preparations the president is making for the debates, and as is common in pre-debate strategy, it also has been downplaying just how well the president might do in the debates, hoping, of course, that after the debates, they can point to how well he actually did do. Jill Doherty, the White House.
Russ Perot has bought more airtime. Perot will pay $900,000 for a 30-minute program on NBC Election Eve. And next Saturday, Perot plans to air an hour-long program on ABC. Now, this is all in addition to dozens of 30- and 60-second spots scheduled to air next week. Other than the ads, Perot has done no formal campaigning since declaring his candidacy October 1st.
Tonight, we take a look at a political race in Delaware, a state that has a congressman running for governor and a governor running for Congress. By law, Delaware Governor Mike Castle cannot run for a third term, so he's vying for the congressional seat now held by Tom Carper. And as Rich Maneri reports, Castle is up against a man who used to be his second in command.
Program! You needed a program to tell the players apart, not just the ones inside the University of Delaware's football stadium, but outside, where the game was politics.
Jim Robb, Democrat for Insurance Commissioner. How are you?
Come and listen to the guy talk.
Bush Quayle. I am running for county council.
The race getting most of the attention in Delaware is the one for Congress, where Governor Mike Castle is taking on his former colleague and Lieutenant Governor S.B. Wu. S.B. Wu failed in his bid for the U.S. Senate 4 years ago. A college professor by trade, the Democrat is now trying to pull off a big upset by beating Castle, a two-term Republican governor.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. All right.
Wu says he is not a politician, and he wants the voters to know it.
They are really disgusted with the performance of career politicians, which my opponent is.
My record of being governor for 8 years, lieutenant governor for 4 years, with a string of achievements that the record speaks for itself.
You are not likely to see much mudslinging in this race. In fact, for a change, both candidates actually have nice things to say about each other.
I have a great deal of respect for Professor Wu and some of the things that he has done.
Well, he's a nice guy. We worked well together.
And Wu and Castle agree that the economy should be #1 on the priority list for the next congressperson.
If there's anyone who's unemployed or underemployed, if there's anyone who wants a different job opportunity, then I think we have a responsibility to go out and create that opportunity.
America must adopt a comprehensive national economic strategy to help sell American products. The more American products are sold, the more American jobs will be created.
A recent poll showed S.B. Wu running 11 points behind the governor, but now Wu says he's gaining ground. An experienced politician that he is, Mike Castle says he's not taking his lead for granted. In Newark, Delaware, Rich Maneri, the 10 o'clock news.
Coming up, an American who was seized by Iraq on Thursday is now a free man.
The IRA claims responsibility for yet another explosion this morning in London. And later, someone you should know, a man who has made South Philadelphia a little more delicious.
It's Murphy's birthday, and Frank's got a big surprise.
Something you've never had, but have always wondered about.
He's hired someone to be her big sister.
Oh, boy, someone I don't know just hugged me. What's going on, Frank?
But all she is to Murphy is a big father.
She's obviously got your mother's arms. They're so delicate, not nearly as furry as yours.
Is there any escape?
Oh, God, I'm in a Stephen King movie.
Murphy Brown.
6 o'clock weeknights on Fox 29.
Now, there's something better than an answering machine.
There are 5 new messages in your mailbox.
Something that does what an answering machine does, but does it through your phone.
It's me. Look, meet me in an hour back at the office.
Something that won't miss a message because it wasn't turned on. That will take a message even if you're already on the phone. It's Answer Call. And it's the answering machine without a machine. Call now and save $5 on the service connection.
It's Strawbridge & Clothier's Columbus Day sale. Save 25% on our entire stock of kids' outerwear. All on sale at Strawbridge & Clothier.
Has the simple joy of driving become a casualty of the times? Introducing 200 turbocharged horses. Uncanny grace. And one of the safest cars Saab has ever built. The new 9000 CSE. A car you can drive hard with your conscience intact.
See your Saab dealer now for a special introductory offer on the 9000 CSE and CS.
Every month, enter the world of fine interior design. Enter the fascinating world of Architectural Digest. View a pied-à-terre in Paris and an English designer's bright and airy London home.
Call now and get 12 issues of Architectural Digest for only $29.95. You'll also receive absolutely free Celebrity Homes Revisited, a tour that includes the homes of Jeffrey Bean, Pavarotti, and Cher.
Call toll-free 800-854-0700. That's 800-854-0700.
The American bomb expert who was seized by Iraqi police last week has been released. Iraqi authorities released American Chad Hall at the United Nations Iraq-Kuwait Observation Mission in Baghdad. Hall had been working in Kuwait after the Gulf War and was arrested near the Iraqi border.
The matter is successfully settled, and that we know that tomorrow in the morning hours, Mr. Chad Hall should be back in the same place when he was working, in Kuwait.
Journalists working in Iraq were told that Hall is in good health and that his arrest was a mistake. There had been speculation that Hall's arrest was an attempt by Iraqi President Saddam Hussein to provoke President Bush on the eve of the election.
Edward Shevardnadze, the leader of the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, is hinting that he's ready to send troops into neighboring Russia. That region has been a political hotspot since the breakup of the Soviet Union. Shevardnadze wants to fight Muslim and Cossack militants who have joined forces with anti-Georgian separatists. Russian President Boris Yeltsin has offered to meet with Shevardnadze in order to defuse tensions, but the Georgian leader so far has declined. The death toll from last Sunday's LL crash is down to 80 from the original estimate of 250. People who were originally on the missing persons list have been calling to a hotline set up by the city of Amsterdam. Rescuers have recovered 51 bodies so far, but more people are believed to have died. Dutch officials say they found pieces of the jet engine believed to have triggered the crash. A fire in that engine probably set the disaster in motion.
The seventh bomb in 4 days exploded this morning in London. The device went off near a telephone booth next to a subway station and high-security police station. One man was blown off his feet by the blast and injured his head. The Irish Republican Army has claimed responsibility for the attacks as part of a plan to disrupt British life and pressure the government into giving up control of Northern Ireland. Pope John Paul is looking fit on his first outing since abdominal surgery last July. The Pope is paying a 6-day visit to the Dominican Republic. The Vatican maintains he's there to commemorate 500 years of Christianity in the New World, even though official celebrations on the island are for the Christopher Columbus holiday.
There's some people in Northeast Philadelphia who believe the world will end this month. But the only thing that will definitely end are the church services they hold. Neighbors in this residential community say the church is illegal, and this week, the city agreed. Parlin Chang has the story.
Bradford Terrace is a quiet, peaceful street in Northeast Philadelphia. But many neighbors are blaming this man for changing that. Meet Pastor Yang Kim. Neighbors accuse him of illegally operating a church in a residential zone.
3 nights a week, you can hear this chanting. You see 100 people going in there, and I'm not exaggerating when I say 100 people going into his house, little kids.
We don't care if they live there, just don't want any services on the block.
We never went out to bother any people. We always help people around.
Ina Lee is the pastor's niece. She says theirs is just a close-knit group of about 15 members. They believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ, also known as the rapture. Many Christians do indeed believe that, but this small Korean-based minority sect called the Tabera goes one step further. It follows the prediction of this young prophet.
We will believe October, this month. Heck of a load of baloney, because I don't think anything's going to happen.
Though they disagree about religion, all parties do agree the services here will have to stop. The city this week ordered the pastor to close his church, so the pastor's flock will have to worship elsewhere. Their faith tells them that believers will go to heaven if Jesus returns, and those who do not believe will be damned.
We were just waiting for the Lord. Is it crazy for a Christian to wait for the Jesus' second coming? If this person truly loves the Lord, he should be waiting for the Lord coming.
Pastor Kim says he will continue his world mission to spread the gospel. But as long as he stops using his home as a church, neighbors say they are satisfied. While Pastor Kim has stopped his services, he still believes the rapture will take place by the end of this month. If it does, he will not have to worry about finding a new place to worship. If it does not, he says he will be labeled a false prophet and forced to take on a new job. In Northeast Philadelphia, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Coming up, a day of remembrance in Washington for people who have died of AIDS.
And they risk their lives every day. Take a ride with Philadelphia's Rescue One. But first, Philadelphia's Most Wanted.
Reports that Dunn plans to file a lawsuit.
Robert Dunn, The man who suffered a head wound in this scuffle with union pickets has gone back to the hospital.
He has great pain, great dizziness when he tries to lift his head, constant nausea. He suffered a severe closed head wound.
Oliver Fry is Dunn's attorney. Fry told a news conference that Dunn plans to sue the city and the unions for monetary damages, the city for not protecting Dunn, the unions for assaulting him. Fry is using as evidence this videotape, subpoenaed from the 10 o'clock news.
He was the victim of someone else's savage act of aggression.
On this point, police agree with Dunn. Police charge this man, Richard Curvin, with assault. He is a union sympathizer. He faces a court hearing tomorrow. But last week, the union told a different story of Dunn as the one who started the attack first.
I asked him if he would honor the picket line, and he said that he did not care about city workers, and he charged me through my stomach.
We heard all the sound, saw the action. There was no exchange of words whatsoever between Bob Dunn or anyone on the picket line as he was attempting to enter City Hall.
Fry says his client was just trying to get some city records because his wife is suing him for divorce. But instead, he got a wound so bad that he cannot recall what happened.
Well, this lady's pushing him.
The attorney says he is now looking for one key witness. The man who was heard on the tape is saying, "I saw that. You threw the man down."
Hey, I saw that. You stuck the man down.
Fry says the police should have done more. Today, neither the police nor the unions had any comment on the lawsuit brought by Robert Dunn. His attorneys believe the videotape will prove to any jury that Robert Dunn deserves more than $50,000 in damages, but it could take as long as 5 years before this case goes before a jury trial. In Center City, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Coming up, the liver of a pig is transplanted into a woman in Los Angeles.
Who have been investigating the incident leave many questions unanswered. In a report to then Soviet leader Yuri Andropov, the Soviet defense minister and the head of the KGB said, quote, "We have not succeeded in obtaining direct evidence of the espionage nature of the plane." But what is confusing is that the same report insists that Flight 007 crossed into Soviet airspace intentionally. There is evidence in the file that only 18 minutes before it went down, the plane was in contact with another Korean airliner whose crew would probably have known that Flight 007 was off course. What the file does not explain is why the aircraft, whose wreckage lies on the bottom of the Sea of Japan, had wandered off course and over Sakhalin Island, Soviet territory. Raw data from the plane's flight recorder are not included in the file that Yeltsin handed over today. However, transcripts of the cockpit conversation are. According to the Russian journalists, those transcripts show the plane's pilot had time after the plane was hit to tell passengers to fasten their seatbelts and put on their oxygen masks. Then, the final transmission. Tokyo, this is KAL 007. Don't break contact. Give me instructions. We are losing pressure fast. I'm going down to 10,000 feet. Then silence. Relatives of passengers who were on that flight say Russia has taken an important first step toward solving the mysteries surrounding Flight 007. Tomorrow they have meetings with 2 senior officials appointed by Boris Yeltsin to answer the follow-up questions raised by what Russia has revealed today. John Donovan, ABC News, Moscow.
Still in Russia today, a guilty verdict for the man who carries the label world's most deadly serial killer. Andrei Chikatilo was convicted of torturing and killing 52 boys, girls, and young women. He went on killing for 12 years before he was caught. The cage is to protect him from the family members of his victims. Sentencing is expected tomorrow. A court-appointed psychiatrist says Chikatilo is sane, and so he'll either be executed or sentenced to life in prison. In a moment, the other news was politics involved when the State Department told its embassies overseas to dig up information on Bill Clinton. On the American agenda tonight, how the candidates would give parents a greater say in where their children go to school. And some fraternities at one school, UCLA, in hot water for the songs they sing.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Carnival Cruise Lines.
Know where I am? I'm at one of the finest resorts in the world, and if you're looking for a great vacation value, look no more. All your daytime fun, all your nighttime entertainment, and all your food is included in one low price. But what makes this resort really great is that it takes you to some of the world's other great vacation spots.
In the morning, in the evening, Carnival's got the fun.
Fun. That's what makes Carnival the most popular cruise line in the world.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you.
In presidential politics today, a new reason for confrontation between the Bush administration and the Clinton campaign. The State Department has confirmed today that last month a senior official told U.S. embassies in Britain and Norway to search their files for any information on Bill Clinton during his years as a graduate student in England during the 1960s. Dirty tricks, say the Democrats. Just routine, say the Republicans. Here's ABC's John McCarthy.
Governor Clinton pointed to today's newspaper headline as proof that the State Department was going through his personal records for political purposes. The State Department said it acted properly in responding to Freedom of Information requests from reporters who have been doing their own investigations of Clinton's student days at Oxford.
I absolutely do feel that there is no inappropriate behavior at all in this, that the actions of the department's officials were directed at carrying out the law.
Spokesman Richard Boucher confirmed that it was unusual for Elizabeth Tamposi, an Assistant Secretary of State who was appointed by George Bush, to personally phone U.S. embassies in London and Oslo to urge a thorough search for information on Clinton. Has she had any contact with the Bush campaign or the White House?
I asked her, she said no.
Boucher claimed it was not unusual to pull passport and visa files, even though that kind of information is confidential and could not be handed over to the media anyway. The Clinton campaign is buying none of it.
It's plain that the White House is politically using the State Department in a blatant attempt to politicize the entire State Department bureaucracy.
Whether the Bush administration acted unusually or not, all the digging through Clinton's records has failed to provide any new revelations about the governor. Just another issue for the two sides to fight over. John McCarthy, ABC News, Washington.
In the aftermath of the vice presidential debate, there was certainly not afterglow for a lot of people. Senator Gore said today he didn't jump to Governor Clinton's defense because he didn't have to. The Bush administration, he said, is unraveling, and George Bush is in a political panic. None of that from the White House as the president welcomed Vice President Quayle back from Atlanta. First-class performance, said Mr. Bush, a home run. Ross Perot's running mate, James Stockdale, said he was taken aback by last night's events, and his wife said she found the proceedings gruesome. Well, after the debate last night, we heard a great many people wondering whether, after all the punching and the counter-punching, had the candidates actually been straight with the facts. So we asked ABC's Jim Wooten to go back over the transcript and check it out.
Let's talk about.
Well,
let him
talk, Senator.
Just lighten up here, Al.
The blue ribbon for factual flexibility goes to the Vice President. More often than Senator Gore, Mr. Quayle was either mistaken or misinformed. For instance, on the environment, referring to Gore's best-selling book. One of the proposals that Senator Gore has suggested is to have the taxpayers of America spend $100 billion a year on environmental projects in foreign countries. That is not true. Gore's book proposes a global plan financed by several countries, not the U.S. alone, and it does not specify a total cost or America's share. On the Democrats' proposed goals for automobile fuel efficiency, Increasing the CAFE standards, the fuel economy standards, to 45 miles a gallon is a good idea. 300,000 people out of work. that estimate is based on an unlikely worst-case scenario that all workers now building cars which do not meet that standard would eventually lose their jobs. I was in Middletown, Ohio, talking to a welfare woman where she was worried, he said, about losing health care benefits if she took a job. Under President Bush's health care reform package, that woman won't have to make a choice about going back to work or health care for her children, because she'll have both. Not necessarily true. If she made about $16,000, all she would get under the president's plan is a $375 tax credit to be used toward health insurance that costs the average family $5,000 a year. Senator Gore was loose with the facts or his interpretation of them on the subject of trade.
You know full well the Caribbean Basin Initiative. You've supported that. That is a program there.
I voted against it.
He did vote against it twice, but he also voted for it once as part of a larger legislative package. On arms control, Gore said Bush had failed to eliminate Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles and made matters worse by putting Secretary of State Baker in charge of his campaign.
But when he took the person in charge of the negotiations out of the State Department and put him in charge of the re-election campaign, the deal unraveled.
In fact, the commitment from Russian President Yeltsin is a fairly standard step in the negotiating process. And arms control experts say the removal of Secretary Baker is of no consequence to those negotiations. The bad news is that in campaign debates, as in war, truth is usually the first casualty. The good news is that most voters know that already. Jim Wooten, ABC News, New York.
In our campaign notes tonight, more information about Governor Clinton's health. At the urging of reporters, his campaign has released letters from 4 doctors today which say the governor has a few common allergies and weighs a little too much at times. Other than that, he is fine. There's a new development today in a banking and political scandal that may have implications for President Bush. It's the case of the Italian Banco Nazionale Lavoro, or BNL, whose Atlanta branch made billions of dollars in illegal loans to Iraq before the Gulf War. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, David Boren, has asked the Attorney General to appoint an independent counsel to investigate why the Bush administration has not been more candid about its knowledge of what the bank was doing. Here's ABC's Tim O'Brien.
The CIA and the Justice Department have already admitted misleading prosecutors and Congress about the Atlanta bank and its illegal loans to Iraq. Senator Boren said today an independent counsel is needed to investigate those agencies because they cannot be trusted to investigate themselves.
Police in Newcastle County, Delaware, are looking for a serial rapist suspected of attacking as many as 8 women. Police say the attacks on single women, mostly in their apartments, have been going on for more than a year. Farland Chang reports.
Newcastle police are trying to stop a serial rapist, a man believed to have raped as many as 8 women in and around Newark. The crime started as early as 1 year ago. The most recent report of rape took place last Saturday, here in this secluded mobile home park.
It's very scary because you don't think of anything like that happening in such a small area. You never hear about it.
The other attacks have occurred mostly in townhouses and apartments, including the Chestnut Crossing apartment complex.
She walked in her apartment and she was stalked. He was waiting for her in the apartment, and he attacked her.
I think it's one of the most serious cases that a predator can perpetrate in a free society like this.
The victims range in age from 20 to 35 years old. Investigators say the rapist studies his victims well.
He was quite comfortable that they were alone in the homes when he entered. And that would leave us to believe he's been following him or watching him for some period of time before he committed his crime.
Police say so far the rapist has attacked on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night. He usually goes after women who are in their home alone, and he usually wears a mask. Police describe the suspect as a white male, 20 to 35 years old, between 5'10" and 6'2". He is overweight with a pot belly. Anyone with information is asked to call 302-573-2820. Newcastle police are getting help from the FBI. Together, they urge women to be alert for anyone following you. You should avoid routines, alter your schedule, keep doors and windows locked, and do not enter your home if you see signs of a break-in. Despite the precautions, many single women living on their own are concerned for their safety.
I mean, it's kind of frightening when you got to walk out and be worried about, you know, if you're safe or not.
I'm really frightened because most of the time at night I'm home by myself and I just had a little girl.
Police say they have increased patrols in hopes of stopping the rapist before he strikes again. In Newcastle, Delaware, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
About 40 radium-contaminated products.
Let's start with you. Tell us about this format. What's in it?
Peter, it is the most unusual format that I've ever seen in any presidential debate by far. Indeed, I think it may dominate the coverage tomorrow. If you look behind me, you'll see that there are not 3 lecterns or podiums, but 3 stools on which the candidates will sit. They will be answering questions from 220 undecided voters selected by the Gallup organization. These candidates have portable, what we call lavalier mics, put on their ties, and they are mobile. In other words, they are likely to be leaving their chairs, walking up to the audience, the member who asked them a question, and dealing with them face-to-face, whereupon the other two candidates can do the same. We've been talking a lot this year about the alternative media, the use of talk shows by the candidates. Now this format seems to have invaded the debate. We may call this What's My Line, or in the case of Ross Perot, the $4 trillion pyramid. It's going to be fascinating.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. Now let's go to ABC's Chris Bury, who is standing by. Jeff, I know that some people in the Clinton campaign were not very happy with Senator Gore for not having suspended their candidate's character a little more vigorously when he was in the vice presidential debate. Is this something we should look for tonight?
I think that to a certain extent the Clinton campaign expects a more aggressive George Bush. Just to give you a hint, they've been calling their practices the last couple of days war games. But if the trust issue comes up, if the character issue comes up, I think you can expect Clinton to turn it around and say to George Bush, who are you to talk about trust? Who are you to talk about character? And then reel off the familiar litany of things like Iran-Contra, read my lips, Iraq-gate, and that kind of thing.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I think what we will see tonight is a more relaxed Bill Clinton. The differences for Clinton tonight may be much more to do with style than substance.
Okay, and finally to Britt Hume, our White House correspondent who covers President Bush. Britt, what's the president worried about most?
Well, Peter, the thing he's obviously worried about most is that he's 10 or 15 points down in nearly all polls and comes into this debate with a game plan that basically calls for him tonight to be, as the Bush aides have been putting it today, presidential. Now, there's a feeling that if he tried anything else, any wild swing at Clinton, anything more dramatic than he's been trying, that it might well backfire, probably would backfire. The problem for the president is that a conventional performance, even given this unconventional format, is not likely to make a big change, and so he has a serious problem.
Okay, Britt, thank you very much. Chris as well, and Jeff, the debate tonight is 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Hope you'll join us for that. To follow up a little on what Britt was talking about, an indication why the campaigns do think tonight's debate is important. In our national poll, the race is looking tighter. Governor Clinton is down to a 7-point lead over President Bush. The margin of error is plus or minus 4%. But as Britt alluded, some polls show the gap wider, and during a week with 3 debates, the numbers in a lot of polls can be quite different. In our campaign notes tonight, an admission from the State Department that it did violate standard procedure when embassy officials in Britain and Norway were told to search their files for information on Bill Clinton when he was a graduate student 23 years ago. The Clinton campaign called it dirty tricks. The State Department said it was a mistake, and nothing was found. In Pennsylvania this year, the presidential campaign must compete for public attention with a very bitter fight for a U.S. Senate seat, which is where we go next. A survey of registered voters done for our affiliate, WTAE, and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette shows the incumbent Republican, Senator Arlen Specter, holding a 7-point lead over his challenger, Lynn Yackel. Like a lot of the other women running for Congress this year, she got into the race because she was outraged by the events last year in a Senate hearing room. Here's ABC's Cokie Roberts.
Back in the spring, it was the issue that propelled Lynn Yackel into the Democratic nomination. Arlen Specter's tough interrogation of Anita Hill.
Did this make you as angry as it made me?
A lot has happened since then. Yackel was far ahead in the polls, but over the summer she made mistakes and her campaign faltered. Now she's coming back with help from the top of the ticket.
And I hope you'll help send Lynn Yackel to the United States Senate.
And after all of Yackel's ups and downs, the issue that got her started remains a powerful weapon. That picture of Arlen Specter grilling Anita Hill. The senator recently decided to deal with it head-on by enlisting the help of the widow of the late Pennsylvania Senator John Hines.
And I certainly didn't agree with Arlen Specter during the Clarence Thomas hearings. Nevertheless, I am supporting him.
Specter is stressing his support for abortion rights and civil rights as he tirelessly stumps the state, reminding voters of his seniority. But those hearings of a year ago still make Pennsylvanians of both parties angry.
He turns me off.
Does the whole Anita Hill thing have anything to do with that?
It does.
I think the Anita Hill thing did it for me.
If in the year of the woman, Specter's questioning of Anita Hill still causes problems for the incumbent, another problem could prove even greater. President Bush is trailing in Pennsylvania, and the Republican senator could fall victim to the year of the Democrat.
There is a concern about what happens with the ticket overall, but I have established a record for independence.
Pennsylvania re-elected a Republican senator when Lyndon Johnson swept the state. And in this year of change, Specter's counting on tradition, hoping that history will repeat itself. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, Philadelphia.
In a moment, we'll go on to some of the other news. A warning about those big tractor-trailer trucks. Their brakes may not work. On the American agenda, how the candidates would help you pay to send your children to college. And finally, where the fish are. An American fishing paradise in Russia.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Cotton Incorporated.
With trusting eyes, the children show, minds open, hearts true, our spirits grow. The touch, the feel, the fabric of our lives. The touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of our lives.
A short while ago, Carol Walters was troubled with arthritis pain. But she promised Pete they'd go for their run. So she took a Motrin IB. The same medicine as in the Motrin doctors have prescribed for years, but in non-prescription strength. And just one Motrin IB works as well as 2 regular aspirin. So now Carol's ready.
Let's go, Pete.
Pete's been ready for a while. Motrin IB, the relief of Motrin in non-prescription strength.
The federal government is under pressure tonight to do something about an ever-present danger on the highways. Every year, more than 5,000 people are killed in accidents involving heavy tractor-trailer trucks. Safety officials say very often the big trucks get involved because their brakes are not working. Here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
Just days before this truck crash near Los Angeles, the driver had complained about problems with his brakes. The tractor-trailer jackknifed across a freeway. When the Mercurio family came upon it, they couldn't stop in time.
The flames were so intense I could see them from a half a mile away.
The family never had a chance.
Part of me went with him. My life will never be the same without him.
A survey of 1,500 trucks by the National Transportation Safety Board found that 3 out of 5 had brake problems, including leaks in the air systems and improper adjustments.
If that truck gets involved in a compromised situation, the braking capability simply isn't going to be there.
The trucking lobby insists many of those vehicles were safe.
Every one of those trucks would stop in a regular stop or a panic stop. Remember, they have 10 brakes.
Pump it down just a little bit to 90 for me.
To 90?
Stop.
At this checkpoint in Northern Virginia, police say brakes are the #1 problem. They impounded Charlie Perkins' rig because grease was leaking onto a brake lining.
There's no reason this truck will make it home easy, and it's safe to drive.
The National Transportation Safety Board says most truckers are not mechanics and may not know when they have a problem.
The NTSB says inspections are not enough. The board wants to require anti-lock brakes and devices to warn drivers when their brakes are bad. The proposal would also set uniform inspection and repair standards. But the plan must undergo reviews and public hearings, which could take years.
They have to do something, because God knows it could strike another family.
Bonnie Galaire says if the government does not act, her family will have died for nothing. Bill Greenwood, ABC News, Washington.
In other news today, one of the meanest streets in any city has claimed another young victim. For a long time, Chicago's Cabrini Green housing project has been synonymous with the problems of drug and violence that plague so many inner-city neighborhoods. Now Chicago is mourning the death of another child in Cabrini Green. ABC's Mike Von Frem reports.
It reminds you of Sarajevo. Apartment buildings riddled with bullets, blood on the streets, and families constantly in fear of a sniper's bullet.
They always shooting that building right there. That ain't right. They need to close it down. All the time, all night, they shooting and stuff. For what? They shooting for?
Violence is not new to the Cabrini Green housing projects, but what happened this week has the city paying attention.
And I'm Lee McCarthy. Here's what's happening.
The second presidential debate in 5 days continues at this hour in Richmond, Virginia. This debate is different from the first, with a freewheeling format featuring questions from an audience of undecided voters. The candidates began the debate talking about free trade.
The thing that saved us in this global economic slowdown has been our exports. And what I'm trying to do is increase our exports. And if indeed all the jobs were going to move south because they're lower wages now, and they haven't done that.
The trick is to expand our export base and to expand trade on terms that are fair to us. It is true that our exports to Mexico, for example, have gone up and our trade deficit's gone down. It's also true that just today a record high trade deficit was announced with Japan. The deficit now has been building up for 12 years. I'll tell you exactly what I think can be done. I think we can bring it down by 50% in 4 years and grow the economy. Now, I could get rid of it in 4 years, in theory, on the books now, but to do it, you'd have to raise taxes too much and cut benefits too much to people who need them, and it would even make the economy worse.
Governor Clinton's program wants to tax more and spend more. $150 billion in new taxes, spend another 220. I don't believe that's the way to do it. Here's some things that'll help. Give us a balanced budget amendment. He always talks about Arkansas having a balanced budget, and they do. But he has a balanced budget amendment. Have to do it. I'd like the government to have that.
Now, the thing I love about I'm just a businessman. I was down in Texas taking care of business, tending to my family. This situation got so bad that I decided I better get into it. American people asked me to get into it. But I just find it fascinating that while we sit here tonight, we will go into debt an additional $50 million in an hour and a half. Now, it's not the Republicans' fault, of course, and it's not the Democrats' fault, and what I'm looking for is who did it. Now, they're the two folks involved, so maybe if you put them together, they did it. Now, the facts are we have to fix it.
But I think the first negative campaign run in this election was by Governor Clinton. And I'm not going to sit there and be a punching bag. I'm going to stand up and say, hey, listen, here's my side of it. But character is an important part of the equation. The other night, Governor Clinton raised my... I don't know if you saw the debate the other night. Did suffered through that. Well, he raised the question of my father. It was a good line, well-rehearsed, and well-delivered. But he raised the question of my father and said, well, your father, Prescott Bush, was against McCarthy. You should be ashamed of yourself, McCarthyism. I remember something my dad told me. I was 18-year-old, going to Penn Station to go on into the Navy. And he said, write your mother, which I faithfully did. He said, serve your country. My father was an honor, duty, and country man. And he said, tell the truth. And I've tried to do that in public life, all through it. And that says something about character. My argument with Governor Clinton, you can call it mud wrestling, but I think it's fair to put it in focus, is I am deeply troubled by someone who demonstrates and organizes demonstration in a foreign land when his country's at war.
I believe so strongly in the question you asked that I suggested this format tonight. I started doing these formats a year ago in New Hampshire. And I found that we had huge crowds because all I did was let people ask questions and I tried to give very specific answers. I also had a program starting last year. I've been disturbed by the tone and the tenor of this campaign. Thank goodness the networks have a fact check so I don't have to just go blue in the face anymore. Mr. Bush said once again tonight I was going to have a $150 billion tax increase. When Mr. Quayle said that, all the networks said that's not true. He's got over $100 billion of tax cuts and incentives.
The debate is still continuing. Tonight's format was supposed to cause some fireworks. So far, it has not. But you can see if it does, right after the 10 o'clock news, Fox 29 will broadcast the debate in its entirety starting at 11 o'clock.
Despite GOP attacks on Bill Clinton's character, the latest poll shows the Democrats still holding a sizable lead. A CNN USA Today poll taken before tonight's debate shows Clinton with a 12-point lead over President Bush. Before the first debate, Clinton had a 16-point advantage over the president. Ross Perot helped himself the most in the first debate, jumping from 7 to 13%. The State Department says it was wrong for low-level officials to hurry a search of embassy records for Bill Clinton's passport files. The search was in response to the media's request. Under the Freedom of Information Act, the only requests that are worthy of quick handling are those in which delay could pose injury or death. Critics say the administration rushed the records check looking for dirt on Bill Clinton.
The man who was convicted of murdering a Philadelphia police officer, then had his conviction overturned, is now a free man. A common pleas court judge ruled today that because of double jeopardy, Wilfredo Santiago cannot be tried again. Tracy Matisak reports.
What do you hope in the outcome is?
And that justice can prevail the right way.
As far as Wilfredo Santiago is concerned, justice did prevail today, 7 years after being convicted and jailed for the 1985 murder of police officer Thomas Trench. Santiago left City Hall a free man.
This was a case, as the judge said, of a total miscarriage of justice at the first trial. It violated every principle of fairness and due process that we know of.
Indeed, the judge had harsh words for former prosecutor Barbara Christie. He accused her of suppressing critical evidence, like statements from this witness that could have gotten Santiago off the hook. The judge also cited the recent release of convicted murderer Jay Smith as a precedent for letting Santiago go. When prosecutors in his case withheld evidence, they lost the right to a retrial. For Santiago's family, the news was cause for celebration. Since the one they call Cito has been in jail, his father has died and his mother's health has deteriorated.
We're happy that the charges were dropped. We're happy that Cito is acquitted, and he shouldn't have been convicted in the first place.
I think it's a disgrace. I think that, in all fairness, not only to the Trench family, to the Philadelphia police officers, to the victim, and to the citizens of Philadelphia, I think they should have had a retrial. Air it out.
Trench's fellow officers wore their disgust like a badge after the ruling. Many of them felt the real killer had gotten away. The Wilfredo Santiago case is hardly over. Prosecutors are already beginning the appeals process, all in the hope of getting Wilfredo Santiago not only back in court, but back behind bars. At City Hall, Tracy Matisak, the 10 o'clock news.
The first Norristown police officer gunned down on the line of duty was buried today. Hundreds turned out to pay tribute to 32-year-old Officer Thomas Barone. He was shot on Sunday after answering a call to investigate a domestic dispute. Officers from as far away as Chicago, Boston, and Florida came to pay their last respects. A Norristown man is under arrest, charged with Barone's murder. Philadelphia police have made 2 arrests in the murder of a 15-year-old Philadelphia boy. The victim was the son of an aide to Mayor Ed Rendell. Barbara Grant has more.
News of the arrest in the murder investigation of his son gave Sultan Ahmad some reason for hope and thanks.
We personally want to thank the Philadelphia Police Department.
The Ahmeds have been through a long and tough 6 months since their son was killed in April. Today, police announced the arrest of 2 of 3 suspects, 18-year-old Chrisan Hennix and a juvenile whose name is being withheld. They are charged with murder, weapons offenses, and conspiracy.
We were very happy to hear that these young men have been arrested. Certainly we're parents and we have feelings too, but we've lost a child and these young men have to be brought to justice.
Police now say Sultan was taken out here and shot as a result of a series of teenage arguments between him and his alleged murderers. Those arguments may have been ongoing for the better part of a year.
There were several fights that we looked into that the kids had.
In April, family members speculated young Sultan Ahmad Jr. was killed trying to defend his sister.
This was a fight, but there was also one mentioned earlier, and it looked like that was a possible lead that would lead us to the suspects, and that was over a girl. That did not prove to be the reason for this.
Ahmed's body was found in Hunting Park on April 20th. He was 15 years old. The murder has given his father renewed passion for his work at the Mayor's Office of Community Services. Programs for the city's young people are on the front burner there to help stop the senseless violence that makes homicide a leading cause of death among young black men.
We're hoping for the first time this issue of youth violence can be properly addressed. We put a lot of energy into a lot of other things, and I think we really missed the point on our young people.
In the 6 months since his son was gunned down, Sultan Sr. has been raising money for a scholarship fund in his name, trying to combat the sense of hopelessness that spawns urban street violence.
And I think we have to balance that act, if not change that act.
The memory of the murder still brings tears to a father's eyes, but Sultan is not bitter. He says he'll keep working to make sure his son's death is a loud cry to stop the violence. Barbara Grant, the 10 o'clock news.
4 people were killed when a man with a history of failing to make child support payments opened fire in Watkins Glen, New York. 50-year-old John Miller walked into a county social services office, shot one woman first, then walked across the hallway to another office where he shot 3 others. Police confronted him before he shot himself.
Basically, his point was that he had hurt the people that he come to hurt for ruining his life, so he said, and
He said he was going to kill himself. Where was his gun and where were your guns? My gun was trained on him most of the time. His gun was always pointed toward his head.
Miller placed an envelope on the counter before he shot himself, saying it would explain why he shot the workers. The contents of that message were not released.
Coming up, a 3-year school contract standoff comes to an end.
The death of a Palestinian on a hunger strike leads to a day of violence in the occupied territories and a milestone in the Pennsylvania Convention Center project.
Take notice. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. National Warehouse is selling all open stock. 3-piece living rooms from $168. 4-piece bedrooms from $146. Mattresses from $19 each piece sold in sets. Some surplus from recent promotional sales. Some discontinued. Some floor models. Guaranteed free layaway regardless of credit history at National Warehouse.
There's one near you. Philadelphia, Yeadon, Newcastle, Trenton, and Pennsauken. Phone 1-800-688-9856 now. National Warehouse. National Warehouse. National Warehouse.
Under Siege. The Los Angeles Times calls it a gleaming high-tech thriller with laughs and thrills. And USA Today declares it the best Seagal yet. Steven Seagal, Under Siege, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesty.